Hi everyone, Andy Chamberlain here from the Creative Writers Toolbelt. I know that many of you have either bought or are thinking of buying the Creative Writers Toolbelt Handbook, the book that accompanies the podcast. And so I thought I'd make this video to explain to those of you that are thinking of buying the book what it is that you'll get when you do buy it, and those of you that have got the book, how you can get the best use out of it. Now you might know that the Creative Writers Toolbelt Handbook is based on the very best bits of advice and insight that I received over the first 100 episodes of the podcast. And it was always my aim with the Creative Writers Toolbelt to give you the very best practical, accessible advice that you could apply straight away to your own writing. I've done that with the podcast, and I wanted to do that with the book as well. The book is split up into separate areas or dimensions, and each of those separate areas is full of little snippets of information from my guests or insights that I've gleaned, and it's all backed up by illustrations and examples from classic and contemporary literature to help you connect with the particular thing that you want to focus on in your writing. There are 3 different sources or ways to access information from the book. The first is to look in the contents at the front, and there you'll find chapter headings and subheadings across the different dimensions of the craft. The second thing that you can do is to look at the index at the back, pick a subject, just check the index and then look it up from there. And the third thing is the podcast index. So near the back of the book, there is an index of the different podcast episodes. And if you look up the topic that you're interested in, or indeed the guest that I had on the podcast, then you'll be able to check to the podcast episode and pick it up quickly from there. So the book itself is split up into 8 different chapters or dimensions. Each one covers a major aspect of the craft. Chapter 1 looks at story structure, and in this chapter, again backed up by lots of examples and illustrations, I explain to you why I think there is one single structure and model for stories that has been extremely successful over hundreds and thousands of years. Practically all of the stories that we have now that have stayed with us and have stayed popular over centuries, stories that people have told each other orally or have been written down, all have this same structure. In that chapter, I describe what that structure is. Chapter 2 is called Characters and Characterisation. And in this chapter, I explore what I think are the 2 key factors in building a really successful character in your work. And they are character essence and goal, motivation and passion. And again, with a number of snippets of really insightful piece of advice from my guests and also from some examples from literature, I show you how these 2 factors, if you get them right, will take you most of the way to producing some realistic, attractive, interesting and successful characters. Chapter 3 looks at setting, and in this chapter I present to you what I think are the 2 most important factors that you need to bear in mind when you're creating the setting for your work. And they are that it should be credible and immersive. It can't be just one or the other, it has to be both of them. And again, there I give you lots of examples of how other authors have really successfully used that technique. In this chapter as well, we look at the issue of research. How do you go about researching your work? How much research do you need to do? And when you need to actually stop doing the research and start doing the writing. In chapter 4, we look at tools of the trade, and here we cover things like showing, not telling, how to successfully use foreshadowing, and how to really empower your writing and enrich it with sensory description. Chapter 5, we look at the building blocks of writing. So we look at the way in which writing is structured from sentences through to paragraphs and beyond. And we take a special interest in verbs and why verbs are so important in our writing. Chapter 6 is about the sound of our writing, and in this chapter we unlock the secrets of tone and style and voice, and we also look at those sharpest of tools that we have in our tool belt as writers, and they are clarity, brevity and precision. Chapter 7 looks at the identity of the story that we're writing, and by that I mean looking at things like theme and genre. And in this chapter, we also explore how we can use dilemma and symbol and innovation and interweave these things to really bring the particular themes out in the story that we're interested in. Chapter 8, the final chapter, talks about the writer's life. And in this chapter, we have a look at things like physical health, mental health, emotional and spiritual health. And all these things are really important for writers. In that final chapter as well, we look at the process that you're likely to face as a writer when you send your book to a publisher. How does the editorial process work? How does a publishing house work? What are the other options for publishing that are available to us? So all of these chapters are packed with advice and insight and examples and give you a really good grounding in whatever topic it is that you need to explore as a writer. And you can also use it as a really sure foundation from which to explore any number of issues within the craft and go further and get more advanced in them. So that is the Creative Writer's Toolbelt Handbook. You can order it from Amazon, you can get a copy if you drop me an email, or you can order it from any bookshop, and you can get it in ebook format or paperback. If you want to find out more, or you want to stay in touch with me, just drop me a line. Go to my website, andrewjchamberlain.com, click on the contact page and fill in a message from there, and I will get back to you. When I started the podcast and when I wrote this, the Creative Writer's Toolbelt Handbook, I wanted to focus on the practical challenges and issues that writers have. I didn't want it to be theoretical, I wanted it to be a practical and applied and helpful book for everyone. So I sincerely hope that this book is helpful to you and gives you all of the things that you need to be a better writer and produce great work. Thank you.